to watch a performance, you probably don't give much thought to wigs and costumes the actors are wearing. You maybe appreciate their beauty, but perhaps you don't analyse it any further than that. Well, a lot of work goes into their creation, and some facts may just surprise you. For example, Brenda and Lizzie was the head of wigs and makeup department at the RSC. She and her daughter Lizzie have collaborated on a new book, Shakespearean Wig Styling, which is set to reveal some of the secrets from backstage. My kind of book. So let's welcome them both to the show. Hello, you two. How you doing?
Hi. Hello.
Hey, it's nice to talk to you. Now, listen, we've got a lot to squeeze in here, haven't we? Because there's so much to have a look at. So, Brenda, if you don't mind, I'll begin with you first. When did you start working for the RSC and working in wigs in the makeup department?
Oh, back in 1966. But the whole thing was a complete accident. I didn't even know theatres had a makeup department. I'd been studying stagecraft and design, and I thought actors did their own makeup, and I really hadn't given wigs a thought. I went in, unskilled labour just to help out in an emergency, and it was like an Aladdin's cave. And the things that I had already seen on stage, and there they were, just on blocks on the table. But that is really the brilliant thing from the actor's point of view, that they can do what they like with their own hair, but the look for the stage can be kept the same each night to what the designer and director have asked for.
Absolutely. No, that's a great way of putting it. And how much work goes into creating a wig? Because we've been talking about crafts and skills on this show this week.
Well,
is it a really skillful job? It sounds like it.
Oh, it is. It's very much on a par with making costumes, because everyone is different, and the sizes of heads and the shapes of heads change, and the materials that you use change. We've used everything from copper wire to silk, sheep's wool, real hair. So it's amazing, and it'll take about a week to make an average wig. But if it's very long hair or very curly, it can take longer. I did once make a wig overnight for an actress called Zoe Wanamaker.
Oh, wow, no, Zoe Wanamaker, yes.
but that was a long time ago. I don't think my eyes, my hands, or my courage is up to that sort of stuff.
I bet a lot of coffee was drunk that night, Brenda, to keep you awake doing that. I bet that was a pretty mammoth job. And Lizzie, you must be. I know you work with your mum and encouraged you to write this book, and you make wigs too. But what was it like growing up with your mum doing a job like this?
Oh, it was absolutely brilliant. From the get-go, I always knew how lucky I was when I was backstage at the Royal Shakespeare Theatre, in the costumes, in the props departments, backstage, hiding, watching the actors rehearse from upstairs in the rehearsal studios. It was an absolute dream. It should be a book. I should write about it one day.
Well, I'll tell you what, it sounds like a plan, doesn't it? It sounds like a plan. And Brenda, let's talk about some of those wonderful creations during your time. I mean, what really stands out for you? I mean, obviously that's what this is all about. But what were some of those moments, some of those creations that you take a step back and you go, wow, I did that and I was involved in that?
Well, so much of it, you're thinking on the hoof and have to find an instant solution to a problem. We did a Taming of the Shrew with Jonathan Price, and he was doubling up Christopher Sly, who's a vagrant, and it was modern dress. And then he was also playing Petruchio. So what we had was Christopher Sly in rather grubby suit with a can of Guinness, smelling of beer, walking around the auditorium rather threateningly to the audience before the show. And then at some point we had to do a quick change out of that into him being a respectable looking person. And because of the smell of the beer, that was all right on the costume. You could, take that off.
Yes.
But what I had to do is put a waterproof lining on the wig, and then have this vagrant wig on top of his own hair, so he could pull that off and his own hair would be fresh underneath.
Oh, that is brilliant. And who's the loveliest person you've ever worked with? I'm sorry to ask you this, Brenda, because it's putting you on the spot. But
yes, and the point is, I don't think the RSC ever employs anyone that's not lovely. Oh. But we all know that it has to be Dame Judi Dench, doesn't it?
Yes.
She is the pinnacle of loveliness. And on my first 12th night, she was one of a pair of twins, which of course one of the archetypal reasons for having wigs is when you've got to have a pair of twins. It's very rare that you can get actors that look enough alike that you don't need to do that. And in her instance, her and her twin, they made the wigs so they looked identical, but actually they were a mirror image of each other. So the directions of the hair growth. And I didn't know this. And I washed the wigs one day, and I just couldn't get the one wig to look the same as the other one. And I ended up having to reknot a section of it to get it to do that. And it wasn't until we got to the performance and the actor saw it that I realised what a terrible mistake I made.
Oh, that is funny.
And I spent the next day putting it right.
Schoolboy error or schoolgirl error, I think it goes into that category.
Yes.
And Lizzie, I know you're so proud of your mum, but you've got an amazing story as well. You've ended up making wigs for Disney World in Orlando, haven't you?
Oh, it's yes, we're doing several Cinderellas, Tianas, and Vanellope's at the moment. They've got about 25 or 30 different characters that they've offered up to us. But yes, so that's really exciting because you know that you're making such a difference when you're putting each hair in. You're sort of thinking about the little girls and boys who are going to be watching and thinking, how amazing these princesses are. It's really inspiring. And I did some work recently for Little Mix on the confetti video, turning them all into men. So that was really fun as well.
Great stories you both have. I mean, anybody would think that, you should actually turn all your stories perhaps into a book one day. But tell me about this book, actually. So, Lizzie, you tell me all about it. And of course, Brenda, you can point me in the right direction as well. But this is a book that, as I said earlier, Lizzie, kind of encouraged your mum to do.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Mum's been asked several times over the decades to write a book. But she's very, very busy. The theatre deadlines really do have you rushing around. But even after she'd retired, she was still a bit reticent. Obviously, when the pandemic started, beginning of March, everything in our diary got cancelled overnight. And it was a bit of a panicking moment. But then Crowwood contacted us and asked if we'd be interested in writing, or contacted Mum. And Mum said, oh, no, not sure. And I, having finished my master's degree in writing a couple of years ago, was sort of, hang on, I can do this. Together we can do this. So I did all the photography, I did the editing, I wrote bits around the edges. I had a couple of my friends, Made by Soph.com and Will J. Pearce, did the illustrations for me. And then Mum did all the step-by-step tutorials, the lovely pro tips that you get in there on how to avoid common issues. She just had so many amazing insights. Even I was learning, and she's been teaching me since I was 4 years old.
Yes, absolutely. What a wonderful thing for you to both work on, both in the industry as well. And finally, to you, Brenda, what's it like finally knowing this book is available for people to get their hands on? A book that's a long time in the making, full of wonderful things, wonderful stories. What's it like for you?
Oh, it's really exciting, and I'm very proud of it. And what I have noticed from the few people that I've already shown it to is that people who know nothing about wigs are actually finding it a really riveting read. It is interesting, which I hadn't realised when we were writing it. I was thinking a bit more in textbook mode, but it's not. It is actually, even I am still interested in it. And the pictures that Lizzie has found are absolutely amazing. And she roped in some of her friends in the drag kings and queens to model for some of the appearances, which I would never have thought of doing. But of course, it's a totally Shakespearean thing to do. So I'm proud of the book. I love it to bits, and I'd recommend anybody. Although we wrote it for wig people, I'd recommend it to anybody.
And you know what? That's why I wanted to get you on the show, Brenda, because I thought, if let's be brutally honest about it, if this was just to appeal to people in the wig making industry, it'd be a very limited audience. This appeals to absolutely everybody, doesn't it? Brenda and Lizzie, thank you for joining me on the show. All the very best with your book, Shakespearean Wig Styling. Got so much in there. I really enjoyed that conversation. I knew all that. Right, heading towards the